All right, welcome back to the next episode of the Success Mindset. I am excited to be joined by my business partner.
Hey.
Hey, guy, Mr. Vaney Hariri. For those who don't know you, Vaney, tell the world a little bit about yourself.
Well, I come from Buffalo, New York. Then I moved here to Sioux Falls for a period of time. I've lived here for quite a long time. Went to Lincoln High School, go Pats. And then worked with you for a long period of time at various places. And then we are here at Think 3D.
Yeah.
A brainchild that we had 6 years ago. We've been rocking. I mean, we were thinking about it and talking about it before that, but
Yeah. Well, I'm going to hit you. I usually ask this question at the end for folks on this podcast, but what is success to you?
yeah, success to me is purely happiness, and what makes me happy is being in healthy, happy environments. I'm my strength finders. I'm a strategic belief maximizer, relator, communicator, and so for me, whatever it is that I'm doing, I want to believe in it. I want to be strategic in thinking about how I long term. And I love watching other people be successful. I love watching other people be happy. I think for a long time, people gotten comfortable with the idea of being less than who they are and to be turned down. And I just love watching people be unlocked and free. And that's what makes me happy.
It's a big definition that everyone should have as a part of theirs, which is happiness.
Right.
You're obviously a huge, not just a people watcher, a people studier.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that so many people don't find their way to happiness or don't strive for happiness, therefore don't strive for success?
Yeah, I think part of it is the amount of options that they have. It's infinite. To find the thing that you're into. Like there's a lot of people who are doing what they don't want to do. And then there's a lot of people who are trapped into doing what they're good at. And people assume because you're good at it, you want to do it. And there's other things that people are good at that they might want to do more or they might feel more comfortable doing. And I think there's just so many things to try or do. How do you go do that? So to find what you truly are called to do and what you truly love to do requires a lot of experimentation, which also means it requires a lot of failure.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of failure, and sometimes so much failure that you feel like a failure. And if a person is in an environment after environment after environment where they seem like they're the odd man out, and they may be, it starts to feel like it's not meant for you and you're the problem and you just need to assimilate versus keep trying to find that right path.
Yeah. Failure is one of those, everyone's like, oh, you have to grow intimate with failure, blah, blah, blah. We know this, but knowing and doing, two big differences. Right. For those who don't know, again, we, have such a great partnership, friendship, business, because we have the right mix of intellectual thinking, visionary thinking, those type of things. But at the same token, we complement each other very well. For me, many may have heard the story, but again, when I was 19, there was a very clear moment in my life where I saw my mother in pain because of some risks that were taken in our family that found us evicted. And it was that moment for me. It was very jarring in the way of putting me down a path of safety. And safety for me meant get a job, work hard, blah blah blah. And I needed to have a partner who was a little bit more risk taking in that space. So we obviously think 3D once it existed. We're really on either side of it.
100%. I tell people that 100%. Like if he's not doing it, I'm not doing it. It ain't gonna work.
And vice versa. We needed some of those type of things. But unpacking a little bit, obviously, you've always never been afraid to fail. Where do you unpack that a little bit from, growing up? Where did that come from? Where did that come from where you weren't afraid to take a chance and what the world would consider failure? How did you learn through those moments that truly said, let's try it in life?
Well, I think some of the same stimulus, but a different way. I would come home and see, Bill's final notice, yellow, or all those other type of things. You would see those.
Whatever color paper you want.
Red, whatever. And it was a fairly normal occurrence. I had a single mother that was also a foster home. And so we had, she had her kids and more kids. And I just saw her figuring those type of things out. And, you just know that you can't pay everything right now. It was just always such a consistent reality that didn't make me feel like the world was over. I didn't fully understand the pressure that my mother might have been feeling. She might have been super stressed, but it was one of those things where it's like you just got to deal at some point, and your reality is your reality. So when we were in some of those stages, I was just never one of those people that was like, I would get a bill or whatever and be like, oh my God, what are we going to do? It's like, we're going to be all right, you know? The other piece of it is that just even leaving as a young person, we were in an environment where, you know, the stakes were just higher, you know, where you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, wear the wrong thing or anything like that, and you could legit die. Like, you know, there was a young lady that she had to be about 9 years old. She got killed in a drive-by a couple streets over from us, jumping rope. And even as a young person, you just get like, you know, crazy stuff can happen to you. However, you can't live your life, you know, fearful, or else you just can't come outside. And when you apply that to a business situation, when you're in a boardroom or you having a negotiation or whatever, at the end of the day, it's like, what's going to happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I just have that feeling. And I just think that not being who I am and living the way other people want me to live and living less than what makes me happy is so much worse of an outcome than, you know, trying something that I want to do and failing 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just my brain doesn't even go there really.
Yeah. So I'm a 25-year-old aspiring, ambitious person. I hear you, but I came from a background of, again, failure is bad.
Yeah.
How would you coach me through that? How would you coach me to say, you know, again, I really want to take this risk. I want to do things, but I'm scared. I'm scared of failure. What are a few pieces of advice you would give them to kind of navigate themselves and reassociate failure to them?
Yeah, I think success mindset, I think the complement to success mindset is the failure mindset. It's like, what's success to you? But also, what's failure to you? Like, what's failing? Is failing trying something and not have it work out the way you wanted to the first time? Or is failing not trying? Once you decide what's failing, then you can decide how you feel about failure. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, failure is, you know, walking into a place wearing a suit, dressed like somebody else wants me to dress, saying stuff somebody else wants me to say, not being, that's failure to me. I failed. That's where I feel. We talk about this sometimes. When I left corporate, people would ask me, they're like, hey man, are you scared to leave? And I would tell them I'm scared to stay because I could do this. People think just because like it's normal, you know what I mean? Like it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was like, I'm scared to be doing this for the rest of my life because I'm not meant to do this. This is not for me. So I would tell people, number one, redesign what failure is. The other thing that I would tell them is, it's like, I always ask people, you know, what are they more motivated by? Are you more motivated by pain or pleasure? Most people are ultimately more motivated by pain. And if that's the case, either way, but especially if it's pain, like what causes you more pain? What causes you more frustration? For me, failure just means, oh man, I got to do it like that next time. That's all it is to me. It's really no deeper than that.
Yeah.
But when, you know, Todd from accountant comes over and talks to me crazy because he feels like, because he has a placard on his door, that for me is unbearable.
Yeah.
I can't do that. So I have to know where that person's heart at. And then lastly, I would just say it's just to be able to say, sometimes you got to make yourself scared and you got to overcome that just to tap into your courage, whatever that is. And I always, you know, challenge people to think about, you know, can you tell your brain what to do? Can you say, I'm not going to do this for a week? Or I am going to do this for a week. Can you do it? And just do it to know that you can do it. And if you can't, you got to reevaluate some things and go back into your brain. Yeah,
you got to basically, I'm not in control. And how does that really feel if you say, I'm not in control of my life? Because most people think they are, but they're really not. And you use the word, you know, talk about normalcy. If normal is what the statistics show of unhappiness, and I just asking people this question of like, you know, how many people do you know out of the hundreds of thousands of people that are in your world do you know that are truly living their best life? Most people can't come up with 5. So if that's normal, I should be doing everything that's not normal.
Hello.
In that space, because if you really want to have the best life possible,
Yep.
what's the blueprint? What's the examples?
Straight up. But I have this conversation with my wife and I about our relationship. Our relationship is different. And people always used to say, man, your guys' relationship is weird, because, whatever our dynamic is. And then one day we had a conversation about it. We like, yo, normal is most, and most people get divorced. Normal is not the type of relationship we want to have. We want to have an atypical relationship. We want to have an extraordinary relationship, a unique relationship. If your parents were married for 60 years, that is unique. That is not normal.
Happily never married.
Yeah, happily married for 60 years. Yeah. Rephrase that. Happily married for 60 years.
My
That is not
grandparents
normal.
survived it.
Yeah. Or even when we talk to businesses, we tell people cheesy is what we're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Cheesy is what we're going for. Most people ain't happy at work. Why would we try to look like that? We want to look like 1%ers. We want to look cheesy with it. We want to come in and have people be beaming, happy, and whatever. If it's always going to be like that, of course not. But if that's where we're trying to live, then when we regress, which we naturally going to do, have a slip up here or there, we falling into something that still allows us to be able to get up where we need to get up to get ourselves out of that situation. But if your job is not bad, that's one step away from not good. And once something's not good, it's hard to give it what you need to give it in order to get it to great. And so that just has to be something that you're locked in your everyday, that I want that type of quality of life. And you got to realize that your quality of life, or what you see in your mind for your quality of life, may not look anywhere near what anyone else's is, because you don't understand those circumstances. And the problem with comparison, which is where a lot of people's anxiety comes from, is you don't know what you're actually comparing it to. You're comparing it to the packaging. You're comparing it to the imagery. You might be comparing the beginning of your story, chapter 1, against somebody's chapter 10. It just doesn't make sense. You don't know enough about the circumstances to really be able to get a fair comparison. And the most important thing is you're comparing yourself to people who are likely trying to achieve something different than you are. And it's just a bad model, because they're trying to go left and you're copying them all the while you want to go right.
Yeah. Why is it important for people to, I don't care how long it takes, to wrestle with the definition of success for themselves? And I say this in the context of, obviously, when we work with a lot of organizations, one of the most valuable things that we didn't see at first was the executive level coaching, right? Again, obviously, I take on a lot more of the personal development. You give them a lot of professional development, and my God, do they need it, right? And so when you think about a lot of them, then they've got up, they just did the thing because that's what was normal, and find themselves in these spaces of burnt out, less than, which that feeds down into the organization. Why is it important for not just business owners, but just everyone? Why is it important to wrestle with finding out what success means to you, and then making sure that you're taking the confident, clear steps to step into that version of your life?
Because once you accept what success is, it changes everything. Your entire approach to every single thing. It changes how you build your organization. It changes how you build yourself. Because if you're building yourself to win, you know what I mean? Like, if I could be building a vehicle to win, Daytona, but if I'm building that to win Daytona, but then I'm putting myself in something where I'm towing things or I'm off-roading, it's not going to work. I'm building it for the wrong thing. So once you determine the race that you're running and what's winning to you and what success is to you, then you can really build that thing to operate on it. And that's what people have to do. For instance, this is something off the beaten trail a little bit. For instance, in this community, our coffee shop culture, right? No one really talks about the economic value of a coffee shop, right? And so if you ask somebody, is it really important to put a coffee shop in your community? Is that something that, like, the community maybe should invest in? Is that something that maybe we should pay taxes for? A lot of people would be like, for a coffee shop? That's nuts. But when you think about, what do you want a community to do, right? You want people to conduct business. I promise you, in our coffee shop culture, people probably conduct more business at those coffee shops than they do inside of their offices or on Zoom.
Relationship building.
If it's about social collisions, it's about creating connections and giving people opportunity to be around other people. Is it about local commerce and creating engagement there? Is it about giving the entrepreneur, the single mother, the kid that just got out of school, a place for them to work and engage and be inspired and see things. If those are your ideas of what a healthy community is, you better get a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
You'll build your city different.
Yeah.
It'll be less important to have, maybe a parking ramp than have something like this. And so once you change what you believe about success, you'll change how you approach, how you set up your life, how you set up your business, and then what the things that you'll want to see in your community.
Yeah, let's take that topic, community, because obviously we believe in community. It's a huge part of our business model, and I would even obviously say you obviously went well ahead of me, where you've been in community doing work for 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about success as a community, what are some of the things that would make up the construct of how you would view a community being successful?
Yeah, I think the idea of doing good is good business.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the bottom line. And we say that a lot, which is anytime you're operating in that spirit of doing good, anytime you're operating in that spirit of contribution, anytime you're operating in the spirit of investment, you're likely to get more than what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes sense. That's the value of investment. The thing that falls short of investment is getting what you pay for. I pay for a thing, you give me a thing, hopefully that's enough. But when you get value, it's always a benefit, it's always a plus, it's always a bonus. And you only get value when you're giving people more than what it is that they pay for. And when a person invests in their community, they're going to get a 3x, 4x, 5x, 10x return. Because number one, outside of that energy being multiplied, outside of you being able to create relationships, and it's long since been said in business, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that's still a pretty true concept. You still get that piece of it. But the other thing about it is like you get a relationship with your community. I genuinely 100% walk around in these streets and I feel loved. I feel cared for. I feel like people are happy to see me. I feel like they support our endeavors and the things that we do. I feel like they cheer us on. I feel like they benefit us. And ultimately, that is what we want. We want to be loved and appreciated by our community. And sometimes when you're dealing with a community, you're dealing with people who come from many different backgrounds and many different circumstances. And a lot of people come from backgrounds of abandonment and anxiety and pain and hurt and mistrust because of things that have happened to them. And so a lot of times they need to be led back to what happens when you have the real pure idea of community. And our base definition of leadership is that leaders go first. And so for me, I'm not going to wait to give. And when you give to your community, you just get a better return. You get value. And that's what I would tell people why. I think you're a prime example of this. Like you said, I've been doing it for a long time and I learned a lot about what happened. But I think if people watch you, they'll see that in the, because really we've been doing this for 6 years, and really 4 of those years you've been really engaged in the community. Mm-hmm. And if people can see your approach to it and treating it like it's valuable and important, how much ground you've covered in 4 years to how prevalent you are in a lot of these circles and spaces of doing these type of things, then I think people understand you don't need 20 years. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be diligent and focused and on top of it, and you're going to be thoughtful about it and all those other type of things, you can make a huge impact in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, I think that's the right mixture of, two key aspects of the quality of a community is obviously the leaders that make it up, and then the masses willing to participate, right? Mm-hmm. And, obviously a better you is better for everyone. So when you take the skill sets, we're always sharpening ourselves. We're always becoming better versions of ourselves, which I don't even say it's to a fault. I think we'll get on this topic here in a second. But again, when we look at the vision of what we have and how we want to contribute to the community, on paper, it does not make sense any way, shape, or form when 80 to 90% of businesses fail, and it's easy to understand why, but it's important. But before we hop into that, I want to talk about this trajectory we're on with Sioux Falls. 40% diversity coming out of our school system, lots of opportunity, and I think you have a really great perspective that I want you to share of DE&I. Right, it's been a big like culture, a buzzword, even longer than culture. Culture has been a buzzword for the last decade, but DE&I has been a buzzword for 20 plus years. I remember going to being in corporate and loudest duck training and all these things that was to check the box. when you think about, because again, we don't care what people think about diversity, it's happening in our community as a 40% diversity coming out of our school system, et cetera, et cetera. What does success look like? Real success, genuine success. What is real success when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion? Feel free to break them down as however you need to give some perspective on.
For sure. Well, first of all, when we're talking about the idea of DE&I, it's paradoxical in this way, is that most people are trying to cure, unfairness with fairness, right? This idea of everybody who's here now didn't do that back then. Either way, however you slice it. But we're trying to right the ills of what happened back then. And it is very difficult, some would say impossible, to cure unfairness with fairness. Is that we want to cure where everybody didn't get what they needed for a long, long period of time. But we want to cure that in a time where we don't want to deny anybody what they need. Whether you're a white male or whether you're whoever, no one wants to say, nope, you don't get to come in because we need to do whatever with these people. So there's always a dynamic right there. There's a rub, there's a dissonance even right there. So that's challenging. But a lot of times what people happen is, so they want to do something. They want to right a wrong. So when they want to right a wrong, they want to do an initiative. But initiatives in their nature are temporary. It's the thing you do for a period to try to fix something. But the challenge that we have is just far more internal, which is how do you take care of people no matter who they are? Because we all represent some form of diversity. The first form of diversity is the diversity of thought. Then once we go beyond the diversity of thought, there's 1,000 other things that make us diverse, from our worldview to our gender to our sexual orientation, all of those type of things. And so it's very difficult for people to say, we're going to only think about these people, and we want you to help us only think about these people. Who's going to sign up for that? You know what I mean? Not a lot of people. So now we're going back to it being about everybody. So now when we think about our culture, what makes a healthy culture that can support diversity, not create diversity? Diversity is not an initiative. It's a result. It's a result of creating an environment where it works for most people because it gives you the things that people need. And so sometimes when people think of diversity as a special thing you do versus a thing you do, it suggests that Black people need something different, that Asian people need something different, that gay people need something different. But if they're people like your people, they need the same things you need, which is love, support, care, consideration, the ability to speak their mind, agency, empowerment, all those other type of things. So if your focus is not there yet, if you're not putting an emphasis on those things, you're not creating an environment that can support diversity.
Yeah, obviously the work that we do, just list off those 5 or 6 things that you just said, just rank where you're at with those things. Start there.
Start there. That's the real trick, because at the end of the day, again, if it's a situation where it doesn't work for people who think the same, it sure as hell ain't gonna work for somebody who think differently.
Yeah.
And so what are you really doing? The question is, I ask people all the time, people are like, cancel culture, cancel culture. And I tell people, what can you say that won't offend people? And they're like, who knows what will offend people these days? Right. You don't know. And teaching you how not to offend people is a fool's errand. You're never going to be able to do that. Rather, what I want to teach you to be able to do is, if you tell a joke that's unsavory to me or off the mark, that I have an environment where I feel safe and I'm required to be courageous, to be able to raise my hand and say, that offended me, that hurt my feelings, and to have a person be able to assess that and say, I hear you. It's not my intent to hurt you. And this joke is not so valuable to me that I'm willing to alienate you. I've heard you. I'm going to take that one out of my bag, keep it to self, or I'm going to move it to something where it'll be a different type of company that I might drop that joke or whatever it is. I can make adjustments based off of actual relationship and based off of skill set and based off of the environment. That's the only way that you could truly get to diversity, is creating the environment of healthy exchange. Yeah. Now, where you get specific is where you start to genuinely care about people. Because in the midst of actually genuinely caring about people, I might say to myself, I've never walked into a parking lot and been like, oh my God, I'm scared for my life. I don't think about that. But we have women on our team now. And I had to be thoughtful about what their experience is walking out to the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know that now because I have women that I work with and women that I want to protect and that I care about. And so I have to be thoughtful about things I've never would have thought about.
Mm-hmm.
And relationship allows me to be specific and say, we got to get lights in this parking lot. Does everybody benefit for the lights? Technically, yeah, but not most people won't think that they will because I'm not scared. It ain't about you.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we get to that point through relationship.
Yeah. I think just on the topic of community a little bit, obviously it's been 5 years, Leaders of Tomorrow. We set off with an ambitious goal back in 2018 for whoever would listen. Young company, still developing a brand. We want to develop 500 leaders by 2025.
Yeah.
As you think about, the impact, because again, a huge part of success is your quality of life, and the quality of life is driven by the quality of community that you live in. And obviously, we understood how important it was who was going to be the next up leading an organization, and who was going to be next up leading city council and all the different things. And we saw a huge gap. As we now will reach probably north of 350 this year, hit our goal of 500 2 years ahead of time, which is phenomenal. What are some of the things that has, well, first of all, just pause, like the success we've had with Leaders of Tomorrow, what are maybe one or two things that you're most proud of with how far we've come in 5 years, where we've already hit 350 graduates this year?
I wasn't as surprised about that part of it. I think we knew that we were going to get there, and that's, we said it because we thought it was a reasonable number, and we had a pathway to get there. So it wasn't so much that. For me, it's more about the fraternity and seeing the excitement from other people watching other people be successful. And everywhere you go now, every room that I'm in, there's 2 or 3 people from Leaders of Tomorrow doing stuff. There's a consistency in the people who are doers in this community. There are large percentages of them, have gone through, are going through, or will go through LOT. And for me, that's not an accident. That's not a mistake. That's something that's meant to happen. And it shows that people wanted it, people need it. In fact, we need more Think 3Ds out here, not necessarily from our perspective, but we need people out here. People are always like, who's your competition? And I'm like, that's just, in the space of culture, is such a weird thing when you can't service everyone, but you want everyone to have it. If you're doing mission-based work like we're doing, if you genuinely want everyone to have a healthy culture where they work and where they're at, there has to be more of that's not competition, that's help, that's assistance, that's the cavalry, that's teamwork, that's partners, that's what we're looking for. And so I'm not surprised by any of it, but watching people come together and seeing people really be engaged, and just hear how people talk about it when they talk about the fact that, they're transformed. Like, I'm a different person now. Yeah. Like, the things that people used to be able to do to me that were abusive and negative, they can't do to me anymore. The things that I used to talk myself out of, I don't talk myself out of anymore. And the things I wouldn't say, and I would let people just impose on me without countering when I knew it wasn't in line with what my spirit was, I don't let that stuff fly anymore. When I hear that, that makes me excited.
Yeah. So I'll give you my thoughts on this, but 5 years from now, right, is you not just Leaders of Tomorrow, but in a semblance of what you were talking about, how rising tides lift all boats, and what happens when you have hundreds of more confident people building better families, being better parents and spouses. We now had a pilot program at Joe Foss. You have a next generation hoping and aspiring and having vision differently. As we think about the impacts that it's having amongst nonprofits, we look to do our first cohort in nonprofits, or the work we're doing in Justice Impacted and looking at getting in juvenile. As we start to plant the seeds into every impactful reach, doing work with the city, all the different things, and we start to raise up confidence and raise up skill set and raise up perspective and vision of what we can be, even as we are ready to launch our nonprofit Bridging the Gap, and again looking at leading the way in telling stories of the untold, and leading the way in truly reaching down into our underserved neighborhoods and communities. All the things that, again, on paper doesn't make a lot of sense for businesses, especially our size. But again, as you said earlier, doing good is good business. And now as we're building a multi-million-dollar business, obviously we have the ability to do so, the skill set. But what has you excited? What fills up your tank when you get out of bed and you start to see our city and our community step into our potential, driven by not just us, obviously, but the branches and the reach of the people help leading us forward into what can be?
Yeah. I think that the downsides for people in terms of engaging in participation almost always come down to a lack of ownership and a lack of self-belief and confidence. And I'll take the lack of ownership first. I tell the story about how, I used to, be outside and I would watch old people pick up trash, on the sidewalk or whatever. And I always used to think of those people and I would say, man, what a sucker. Why are you out here picking up other people's trash? That's not you. You didn't put that there, And I thought it was foolish. I thought it was silly. And until it kind of hit me that, that person was picking it up because it's their neighborhood. It's their block. They want a clean neighborhood. Why wouldn't they pick it up? Of course they would pick it up. And then it clicked for me that I didn't see the community as being mine. I felt counterculture. I felt outside of it. I felt, whether it because I was young or whether because I was black or whether because I was whatever, I didn't feel in the culture. I didn't feel like it was mine. I didn't feel like I had ownership of the community. And it changes how you feel about the community when you have ownership of it. It changes how you feel about a task when you have ownership of it. And then it's something that you have to do if you want this kind of outcome. The other piece being a lack of confidence, where because most people are trained through an organizational situation, right? Whether you're at home, there's an organizational structure, you're likely not in charge. You go to work, there's an organizational structure, you're likely not in charge. You go to school, there's an organizational culture, you're likely not in charge. And then out in your community, there's an organizational culture, and you're likely not in charge. And so in almost every one of those situations, when you're not in charge, it just goes down, and people only lead down. And so when people think about the idea of them being able to affect their mayor or their chief of police or their community, how could I possibly? I'm not above them. But when you learn true leadership and you had developed true confidence, you realize that you can and must lead up, and that a person's position doesn't give them all the answers, and it doesn't diminish the fact that you might have some of the answers. And so for a lot of room, people won't go to their mayor or their chief of police or whatever and say, I have an idea that you would benefit from, or here's something I would challenge you to do, or to be able to say, good job, let me put their arm around them and say, hey, what do you need from me?
Yeah.
Those type of things. And so I think when people get those two things and they develop ownership and they develop confidence, then they know I got to be in the room.
Yeah.
Because I got something to contribute.
Yep.
And I have something to say. And so I got to get in that room. And once people start showing up, now that person's not a villain anymore, because you know that this person is here trying to solve a problem that you have, and they don't have to be here.
Yeah. I mean, I know you say this often, but imagine a world where, again, truly people live by, the price of a complaint is a suggestion. And that's where, it's amazing. We just had a mayor election, again, very, still embarrassing turnout. There's more than 20-some% of our population who's got an opinion.
Yeah, I do, for sure.
About stuff. One of my favorite, Bible verses is do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this is an important distinction as we talk about becoming the next best version of our community that we can be. It's important to be aware, like, all right, pick the city. What city are we modeling ourselves after? I'll wait, right? Who's this size, who does whatever. There's other semblances of various things, but there's not one blueprint, similar to our business. We're building a business that doesn't exist. Right. So there's nothing to go off of. But the easy thing is to conform of what we know. And again, if most of society is saying, I'm not happy or I'm not satisfied with these things, we have to be aware of how much people conform. But the second side of that is, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so it's like, what are you renewing your mind to? Right. And most people aren't renewing your mind to a thing. What would you say to not even say just the young generation, but anyone who says, yeah, I know better is possible, so why not go after better? How would you encourage them to have greater vision of possibilities, greater vision for their life, greater visions of their organization, greater visions of what our community can be? What would you do to encourage somebody to step into their vision of play with developing their vision in life?
Well, this is a mixture of all the things that we talked about in terms of having, having confidence, having ownership, and then staying away from comparisons, because that's one of the things that goes against it, is that when you are trying to create a situation for yourself, you're not going to see it. That's the thing that's so tough. When we want to confirm that we're moving in the right direction, we look for examples, which makes sense. And sometimes you will find somebody that is similar to you in a lot of ways. But in this new world that we're developing that hasn't existed, where we lead through culture and where money is not the primary goal, and we care about the community and all of those other different type of things, it makes it very difficult to do something different. We deal with, sometimes people can leave a job to go to a new job because they didn't like the old job, but they'll bring the handbook. Why'd you bring right? And that's what you're used to. And you're saying, well, why don't you hover over me like they used to hover over me? But you don't like people hovering over you. Well, I know, but that's what I'm used to. That seems like what a working business does. Well, it does. That you'll do that if you believe that is the only path to success. And again, that comes back to how you define success. So if we don't define our success in quarterly earnings, and we don't define our success in dividends, but rather we define our success over community impact, how we make people feel, how we're able to move an entire community forward, then this all makes sense.
Yeah.
If we're trying to just, again, make a couple bucks, this is one of the dumbest business models you could possibly have. We're not trying to do what y'all trying to do.
Yeah, that's important. For those who have never heard from you on this one, share, what is your personal mission in life, and why that? Why is that so important to you?
Yeah, my personal mission in life is to teach people how to love, starting with themselves. And the reason why that's so important for me is because ultimately I want to be loved. And if you want to be loved, you got to teach people how to love, and you got to teach people how you want to be loved. And so for me, it's like, I've always found that the biggest hindrance I had to anything that I wanted to do was not that people were in conflict with me. It was that people were in conflict with themselves. If I came in with a big idea and somebody looked at me crazy and they couldn't receive the idea, it wasn't because they had a problem with me. It's because big ideas scared them because of whatever their insecurity was. When I had somebody direct negative energy towards me, it wasn't because they really had an issue with me. Most of the time it was because they had an internal issue. I always say to people, if somebody does you wrong, ask yourself, is this something that a happy person would do? And if the answer is no, you should be more curious than frustrated.
Yeah, get curious.
And so for me, it's always been about, how can I create environments where I can help this person be more confident? I can help this person be more vulnerable. I can help this person be more thoughtful. I can help this person be more whatever, in the pursuit of doing it myself. Then when I come in the room with that person, I'm in the room being vulnerable with somebody being vulnerable. It makes it a whole lot easier to be vulnerable than being vulnerable in a room full of people who are trying to hide the fact that they're vulnerable.
Yeah, that's big. That's crazy how, my experience going through Leadership South Dakota, do you really break it down? Like, it's 40 strangers who embark upon 6 sessions, 2 days apiece. And after 12 sessions, I have lifelong friends out of that. And it really starts with Rick and Val's vulnerability. We all attract to people who are vulnerable because you're real.
Right.
You're not hiding anything, but yet we stand behind these walls and hiding these things, which is crazy. Last couple of years of your life, you're looking back, again, you're it's in the final season. You're sitting on the rocking chair, looking back over your life. What are a few key things that will have to have transpired between now and then, where you look back with that smile upon your face with satisfaction?
Biggest thing for me is leadership and culture becoming ubiquitous, becoming everywhere, just something that we do, the norm. And I think the interesting about that is that in order for that to happen, we will kind of get washed away a little bit. And that it would become so normal. No one would care where it got started. No one will care, pushing forward, challenging people, twisting arms, coming back again, doubling back 3, 4, 5 times, asking, begging, pleading, working with, and all that. And nobody would care about those things. But that is the sign of success, is that, people are not connected to your struggle anymore because they're so connected to the fruits of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so a lot of people, their idea of legacy is people remembering their labor versus taking advantage of the fruits.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's the thing. When I just see somebody at work happy and somebody talking about feelings and emotions and caring about their life and it not being weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that changes everything.
Yeah. Mine is a tribe of people taking cold showers in the morning. I'm like, I'm pushed for it.
Yeah, you got that one all to yourself, bro.
All right, last one. I hate folks with the cube conversation card at random. What is a key characteristic of yours that helps define who you are?
Yeah, my mind works in a peculiar way in terms of how I process information and how I think about things. So I would probably say that in terms of, in the way my mind works strategically, I think about the entirety of the thing in really finite detail. One of the things I love to do is understand what goes into what other people do.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing a bunch of different things because I love knowing what it takes for somebody to set up this production. Mm-hmm. So I could be empathetic to that person's situation, or knowing what goes into putting together a class for elementary school. I love partnering with those people so I can say, man, you really do a lot. This is incredible, all the things that you do. I love doing that piece of it. My mind just looks at things that way, and I think that helps me get connected with people. The other thing is just I don't have that thing in my brain that makes me say, you can't. I don't really have that.
Yeah, no, as well as your business partner and best friend, I would add key characteristic, your unquestionable, optimistic naivety that the Bills are going to win a Super Bowl is amazing.
That Super Bowl is coming, bro. That is a fact. That is a fact. You hear me, America? That is a fact. Bills Mafia in the building. Let's go. Josh Allen, we trust.
Good stuff. Well, I appreciate it, man. A good conversation around success mindset and lots to unpack there. So again, looking forward to everyone digesting this several times over, hear all the nuggets, and be able to hear your perspective on these things. So with that, we'll see you guys on the next episode, and have a phenomenal week.